Father, we come to you seeking your wisdom, seeking your revelation. We ask that your Spirit would move among us and reveal things to us as we need to see them. In Yeshua's name, amen. Okay, our favorite Revelation scriptures. Isaiah 46, 9 and 10. I am God, there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, from ancient times what is yet to come. Ecclesiastes 3:15. Whatever exists has already been. Whatever will be has already been. But God recalls what has passed. Amos 3:7. Adonai God does nothing without revealing his plan to his servants, the prophets. Revelation 22:6. And then he said to me, these words are true and trustworthy. Adonai, God of the spirit of the prophets, sent his angel to show his servants the things that must happen soon. So where we left off was Daniel 11:40 to 45. At the time of the end, the king of the south, Egypt, will attack him. The king of the north, Syria, will storm out against him with chariots, horsemen, and many ships. He will invade the lands and pass through them like an overflowing river. He will invade the beautiful land, Israel. The land of Egypt will not escape. He will gain control over the hidden treasures of gold and silver, as well as the riches of Egypt. But reports from the east and the north will alarm him. He will set out in a great wage to destroy and annihilate many. He will pitch his royal tent between the seas and the beautiful holy mountain. Yet he will meet his doom, and no one will help him. And I said in the previous teaching, we haven't seen this one completely fulfilled yet. So I am assuming we have another Egypt-Syrian war. Now we go to Daniel 12. And this is on the heels of that great war. It says, at that time, Michael, the great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people, will arise. There will be a time of distress, such as never occurred since the beginning of the nations until then. But at that time, your people, everyone found written in the book, will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavenly expanse. Those who turn many to righteousness will be like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, close up the book, seal the book until the time of the end. Many will run back and forth, and knowledge will increase. This time of the end keeps coming up in the scripture. We'll see some more verses about the time of the end. Daniel 12, 5 to 7. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, two others stood there, one on this bank of the river, one on the other bank of the river. And one said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long until the end of these wondrous things? And then I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, as he raised both his right and left hand toward heaven. And he swore an oath by him who lives forever, saying, it is for times and a half. Then when the breaking of the power of the holy people comes to an end, all these things will be finished. Comes to an end, will be finished. Sounds pretty final. Daniel 12, 8 to 13. Now I heard, but I did not understand. So I said, my Lord, what will be the outcome of these things? And then he said, go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Many will be purified, made spotless and refined, but the wicked will act wickedly. None of the wicked will understand, but the wise will understand. This is his promise to us. If we are among the wise, we will understand. From the time that the daily burnt offering is taken away and abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. Happy is the one who keeps waiting and reaches the 1335 days. But you go your way till the end. You will rest, and then at the end of days, you will rise to receive your portion. So he's saying, Daniel, don't worry about it. I'm not going to reveal the rest of this to you. I'm done. You can sleep, okay? You can rest. Your time, your duties, your tasks are done now. So this is sealed till the end of time, at the end of days. There's actually 8 different statements about the end that are in this chapter. We've already talked about Antiochus IV. The 4th kingdom on the earth will be different from all the other kingdoms. That's the one that is the legs of iron, that eventually become the toes of clay and iron that are mixed. So it's interesting to note that Antiochus IV Epiphanes had come from the Greek Empire. He was of those 4 generals and the 4 kingdoms that split. He stole his position, but nevertheless, he became the leader in that portion, the Seleucid Empire. He wanted that strip of land we talked about last time. But the Roman Empire, who was already in existence at the time, the Roman Empire intervened and they forced him to back down. Okay, so in essence, the Romans began to grow their authority at this time. Okay, so he was part of the Greek Empire, Empire number 3, but he grew from the Greek Empire, and then the Roman Empire was already there and was going to take control. Daniel 9:26 and 27 says, "Then the people of a prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, but his end will come like a flood." That term, like a flood, means with armies. That's what it means. It's about war. It's used in the scriptures as like a flood. Until the end of the war that is decreed, there will be destruction. So did this happen? Yes. After the Roman Empire began to take over, then, remember, Daniel had the prophecy about the Messiah coming, and the Messiah would be cut off, and after that, there would be this destruction of the city and the sanctuary. So it did take place in 70 AD. The Roman soldiers trampled on Jerusalem, and they destroyed the temple and the city. Who's the prince? It says the people of a prince who is to come. Titus was in charge of the Roman Empire. The people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. So it happened. Does it mean that it's not going to happen again? We know about recycled news. We've been reading about that a lot. Okay, so now let's look at this. 1 Maccabees 1:11-15. In those days, there out of Israel came wicked men, out of Israel, who persuaded many, saying, "Let's make a covenant with the heathen," make themselves uncircumcised, forsook the holy covenant, and joined with the heathen. Look at the statistics today for Israel. 40% of the Jews are secular. They don't practice any faith at all. 40%. 23% are traditional, meaning probably they do their traditions, but they're not really that religious. They have Passover, they have Yom Kippur, they probably eat the gefilte fish. They do those different things at the different times. That's tradition. Only 14% of the Jews are Muslim. They're Muslims. They've chosen a different faith. 10% of the Jews are actually religious. And 8% of those Jews are ultra-Orthodox. So when Daniel says they're going to forsake the Holy Covenant, I think we can see that in our current day statistics, forsaking the Holy Covenant and joined with the heathen. Matthew 24:3 up to 14, it says, "What will be the sign you are coming and that the world is ending?" And Yeshua replied, "Noise of wars nearby, news of wars far off, but the end is yet to come. People will fight, nations will fight, famines and earthquakes, beginning of the birth pangs." I'm reading all the underlined parts. "At that time you will be arrested and handed over to be punished and put to death. All people will hate you because of me. False prophets will appear, love will grow cold, and increased distance from the Torah." That is our climate even today. The good news about the kingdom will be announced throughout the whole world as a witness to all the Gentiles, and then the end will come. Do you know we are still working on getting translations of the Bible into every language? We're close. We're not there yet. The kingdom, the gospel, must be announced through the whole world, and then the end will come. 2 Thessalonians 2:5-8, it's about that separating from the Torah. It says, "Don't you remember that when I was with you, I used to tell you these things? Now you know what is restraining, so that he may be revealed in his own time. For already the separating from Torah is at work secretly. But it will be secret only until he who is restraining is out of the way. Then the one who embodies separation from Torah will be revealed, the one whom the Lord Yeshua will slay with the breath of his mouth and destroy the glory of his coming." That's one of our signs. Avoiding Torah is going to open the door to the adversary. 2 Thessalonians 2:9-12. "When this man who avoids Torah comes, the adversary will give him power to work all kinds of false miracles, signs, and wonders. He will enable him to deceive in all kinds of wicked ways." And it goes on in the underlined part, "because they would not receive the love of the truth that could have saved them." Daniel 12:3, he says, "Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavenly expanse. Those who turn many to righteousness will be like the stars forever and ever." He's telling us we need to turn people to righteousness. We need to be the light in this dark place. Are we sharing this good news? Are we keeping it to ourselves? "Those who turn many to righteousness will be like the stars forever and ever." Matthew 5:17-20. This is Yeshua talking. He says, "Do not think that I came to abolish the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill." Briefly, I want to explain fulfill. If there's a speed limit on this road, and it says it's 30-mile-an-hour zone, and I drive 30 miles an hour, I have fulfilled the law. Is the speed limit still there for the next guy? Yes. The law is not done away with, but I fulfilled it by driving according to the law. Likewise, if I have a wonderful meal and I'm fulfilled, I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied. I feel great. Fulfilled. If I'm in a marriage that fulfills me, am I going to kick my spouse out? That does not mean fulfilled. Fulfilled does not mean complete, done, and away with. We need to understand. He says, "I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill." Was Yeshua a property owner? No. So therefore, he could not fulfill the laws for property owners. Was he a female? No. He could not fulfill the laws for females in the Torah. He fulfilled everything that applied to him. Likewise, he expects us to do the same. Fulfill what applies to us. And he says, whoever keeps and teaches them these principles of the Torah, this one shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. And I tell you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the Pharisees and Torah scholars, you shall never enter the kingdom of heaven. Notice, he uses the Pharisees as an example of righteousness. They are not always the bad guy. Please note, he says they are an example of righteousness, and unless your righteousness exceeds that of the Pharisees and the Torah scholars, you'll never enter the kingdom of heaven. So let's look at before the day of the Lord. 2 Thessalonians 2, 1-4. The underlined part, the day will not come until after apostasy has come and the man who separates him from Torah has been revealed, the one destined for doom. He will oppose himself to everything that people call a god or make an object of worship. He will pull himself above them all. He will sit in the temple of God and proclaim that he himself is God. Now, you know what? Doesn't the scripture also say that the temple is us, a temple of the Spirit of God? Are we guilty of having this happen in our temple and proclaiming ourselves God in our own temple? We don't need God. We can just make our own decisions. It's an interesting way to look at that. That makes us a man of lawlessness. We don't want to do that. So he says the apostasy must come first, and we see in the scroll of Antiochus that they tried to annul the covenant that was made with God. They tried to abandon Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, and Brit Milah. Matthew 24:15-16 says, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. And then those in Judea must flee to the mountains. Okay, this is Yeshua talking. He is telling us, Daniel the prophet is the one you need to pay attention to. Let the reader understand. I urge you, read Daniel a lot. Ask for wisdom. So if this is a future prophecy, still to unfold in the time of the end, and it is about a physical temple, then we have to have a third temple in order for this to happen. In Haaretz, it's a website and a magazine, on October 4th of 2007, they had an article called The Third Temple Will Be Rebuilt. TempleInstitute.org says that there are 202 commandments that depend on the temple in order for them to be fulfilled. So they have already constructed all the temple worship instruments. They are done. They are ready for the construction of the temple. So if there is a third temple, and it sounds like that, Ezekiel talked about a third temple, then is this going to happen in that third temple? Are we going to see this happen? Somebody decides to put a statue of Zeus or other gods in God's sacred space. 1 Maccabees 1, 54-61. Now the 15th day of Kislev, they set up the abomination of desolation on the altar. And it says they tore or rent in pieces the books of the law and burned them. Wow. Desecrating God's holy word. 2 Maccabees, they compelled the Jews to dedicate their temple to Jupiter or Zeus. 2 Maccabees 5. We read that in the previous lesson. And anybody who wanted to celebrate the Sabbath, they were going to be put to death. They commanded that the temple had to be renamed. It wasn't a temple to the God of Israel anymore. It was a temple to Jupiter. And in Gerizim, the temple that was in Samaria, they called it the Jupiter, the defender of strangers. Let's take a look at some things that are going on right now. 1 Thessalonians 5:2-3, it says, "For you yourself know very well that the day of the Lord comes like a thief in the night. When they are saying shalom and safety, or peace and safety, sudden destruction comes upon them, like a woman having birth pains in the womb, and there is no way they will escape." Now notice the sign that I have up there. It's part of International Peace Day events. It's a poster for that. This is on a website called internationaldayofpeace.org. This is from 2017, a Peace Day theme, together for peace, respect, safety, and dignity for all. 2017, peace and safety. The United Nations also made some various bills in the last couple of years, and one of them was called Peace and Safety. Something to think about. Promised peace, sudden destruction. Mark 13:14 and 19, and then 21-23. "When you see the abomination of desolation standing where it should not be, let the reader understand. Then those in Judea must flee to the mountains." Who flees? The people in Israel. This is a prophecy for Israel. This is not the whole world. Please understand who he's talking to. "For in those days there will be trouble such as has never happened, not since the beginning of the creation which God created until now, and never will. Then if anyone says to you, 'Look, here's the Messiah,' or 'Look, there he is,' don't believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will rise up and show signs and wonders to lead astray, if possible, the chosen. So be careful. I have told you everything beforehand." Catch that. That's what Yeshua said. I have told you everything beforehand. There's nothing missing from what he told us. We're going to know if we read what he said. Matthew 24:9-16 up to 21. "Then they will hand you over to persecution and will kill you. You will be hated by nations because of my name. Many will fall away, will betray one another, hate one another. Many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. Because lawlessness will multiply, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved." Does it say we get to disappear before the end? It says we endure to the end. Endure to the end. "This good news of the kingdom shall be proclaimed in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken through Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, those in Judea flee to the mountains. Great trouble such as has not happened since the beginning of the world until now, or ever will be. Unless the days were cut short, no one would be delivered. But for the sake of the chosen, those days will be cut short." That's a good news. For the sake of the chosen, the days will be cut short. Daniel 12:1, we talked about this one. "Michael at that time will stand guard of the sons of the people. There will be distress like never occurred before." This matches with Revelation 12:7-9. It says, "War broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels making war against the dragon. The dragon and his angels fought, but they were not strong enough. There was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the ancient serpent called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. That's a lot of stress when all his angels are thrown to the earth. There's been a time when we didn't have all the angels thrown down to the earth. But this is going to be the great tribulation, great distress. Daniel 12:1, distress as has never occurred since the beginning of the nation. Mark 13 says the same thing. It says in the underlined part, there will be trouble such as has never happened, not since the beginning of the creation which God created until now and never will be. Matthew 24 says there will be great trouble such as has not happened since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will be. Everybody's matching. They're all saying the same thing. Revelation 11:1-4 says, then a measuring rod like a staff was given to me, saying, get up and measure the temple of God and the altar, and count those worshiping in it. But do not measure the court outside the temple. Leave it out, because it's been given to the nations. It's called the court of the Gentiles, by the way. They will trample the holy city for 42 months. The Gentiles are going to do that, trampling the holy city. I will grant authority for my 2 witnesses. They will prophesy for 1,260 days, dressed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 menorot, the menorahs, that are standing before the Lord of the earth. What's he talking about? 2 olive trees and 2 menorahs. Well, there's another prophecy that matches that. We're going to take a look at that. So the 42 months he talks about is 3 years, 6 months, which is 3.5 years. That matches the story of Hanukkah. 3.5 years they couldn't use their temple. It's an exact match. So here's the prophecy about the 2 olive trees, Zechariah 4:11-14. What are these 2 olive trees? On the right and on the left of the menorah. He said to me, you do not know what these are? I said, no, my Lord. And he said, these are the 2 anointed ones who are standing by the Lord of the whole earth. One day I was asking the Lord about the Hanukkah candelabra with the 9 branches. And I said, Lord, there's always 7 branches on the menorah. So why do we have 9 for Hanukkah? And he said to me, go look at Zechariah 4. So there's the menorah, and on the right and on the left are 2 extra branches, the olive branches. It's in the scripture. How about that? Matthew 17:1-3. After 6 days, Yeshua takes with him Peter and Jacob and John, his brother, brings them up a high mountain by themselves. Now, he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with Yeshua. Could these be the 2 witnesses? There's a lot of speculation about that. A lot of people think, yes, that's true. Daniel 12, 5-7, it says, then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, 2 others stood there, one on the bank of the river, one on the bank of the other river. One said to the man in linen above the waters, how long until the end of the wondrous things? I heard the man in linen, and I'll go to the quote, it is for a time, times, and a half. Then the breaking of the power of the holy people comes to an end. All these things will be finished. There's our finality there. Will be finished. 3.5 years. 42 months. Time, times, and a half. We keep seeing this number coming up. I'm quite sure that they're related to each other. So we know from Daniel 8, Antiochus stopped the daily sacrifice for 3.5 years. It says in Daniel 8, it set itself up to be as great as the prince of the host. took away the daily offering, and the place of the sanctuary was thrown down. Then you go to the underlined part, and it says, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, the sanctuary will then be vindicated. 2,300 evenings and mornings are the sacrifices. 2,300 evenings and mornings represents 1,150 days. So it's the 1,150 days that they didn't get to use the sanctuary. Okay? Josephus, War of the Jews, it says, Antiochus came upon the Jews with a great army. He spoiled the temple, put a stop to the constant practice of offering a daily sacrifice for 3 years and 6 months. This is not in the scriptures. This is a writer of history who was living in the first century. He said 3 years and 6 months the sacrifices were stopped. This also matches the 42 months, 3.5 years. It's all a match. So he's telling us in the story of Daniel what we can expect in the time of the end. Daniel 12:11-13, from that time that the daily burnt offering is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. So what are we going to be watching for on our countdown? He tells us, when this happens, start counting. 1,290 days. Happy is the one who keeps waiting and reaches 1,335 days. Go your way, rest till the end of days, and you will arise and receive your portion. So Numbers 28 tells us about the daily offering. That's how I got my information. It's verse 1-4. Adonai spoke to Moses, commanding, B'nai Israel, tell them this. This is the fire offering which you are to present to Adonai, 2 male lambs, a year old without flaw, as a daily, regular, burnt offering. Prepare 1 lamb in the morning and the other lamb to prepare at twilight. Those are the morning and evening offerings. Okay? The Tamid sacrifice. Tamid. Okay, what else are we going to see at the end? It says in Daniel 7:8-10, I was pondering the horns, and behold, another horn, a small one, sprang up. 3 of the first horns were uprooted. Remember, the horns are kings. Behold, this horn had eyes resembling human eyes, and a mouth that was speaking boastfully. While I was watching, that's a key phrase, while I was watching all this horrendous stuff going on, while, it says, the Ancient of Days took his seat. His garment was white as snow, the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames, its wheels a burning fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands of thousands attended him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. Court was seated. The books were opened. What books? What books? Daniel talks about this, Daniel 12. Everyone who's found written in the book will be delivered. I want to be in that book. Revelation 20, verse 12. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne. The books were opened. And another book was opened, the book of life. The dead, that's not people in the book of life. The dead were judged according to what was written in the books over here. They were judged according to their life, their choices. Then there's the book of life. Is our name in the book of life? Because I guess we're not in that book. We're in this one. Revelation 21, 9-12, and then 27. Then came one of the 7 angels holding the 7 bowls full of 7 final plagues. And he spoke with me. He said, "Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." He carried me away in the Ruach to a great and holy mountain, and he showed me the holy city Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God, having the glory of God, her radiance like a most precious stone, like a jasper, sparkling with crystal. She had a great high wall with 12 gates, and above the gates 12 angels. Nothing unholy shall ever enter it. This is his holy city. Nor anyone doing what is detestable or false. Only those written in the book of life. Is our name in the book of life? That's the key to Daniel. Is it in the book of life? Daniel 12:2, he says, "Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt." And it matches with John number 5. He says, "Do not be amazed at this, for an hour is coming when all who are in their graves will hear his voice and come out. Those who have done good will come to a resurrection of life. Those who have done evil will come to a resurrection of judgment." Daniel 12:13. "But you, Daniel, go your way till the end. You will rest, and at the end of days you will arise with all the rest of the people who have to arise. You will arise to receive your portion." So he's telling Daniel, go to sleep. Don't worry about this. Stay in your grave. I'll talk to you later. So we look at 1 Thessalonians 4:13-18. "Now, we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about those who are asleep." That would be Daniel, right? That would be all the other people who've died, those who are asleep, "so that you may not grieve like the rest who have no hope. If we believe that Yeshua died and rose again, so with him God will also bring those who have fallen asleep in Yeshua. For this we tell you by the way of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will in no way precede those who are asleep." We who are alive don't get to go before them. We do not precede those who are asleep. "The Lord himself will come down from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, with the blast of God's shofar, and the dead in Messiah will rise first. We who are alive," that would be us, "we who are alive, who are left behind, will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore, encourage one another with these words." Notice what this says. It says we will be caught up to meet him. It does not say we will always be in the clouds. Read it carefully. We will be caught up together with him in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. When we see him, we will go running toward him. We will run toward him. But we meet him in the clouds, and we'll always be with him, but he's not going to be in the clouds forever. He's going to be reigning and ruling in Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem. If we're going to be with him, that's where we're going to be. Matthew 25:31-36, and then 41-43. "Now, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations," notice it says Son of Man. Son of Man. That was the phrase Daniel saw in Daniel chapter 7. Son of Man. "When he comes in his glory, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him. He will separate them one from another, just as shepherds separate the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right, but the goats on his left. And then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you are blessed by my Father. Inherit the kingdom, prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." That list describes the people on his right who inherit the kingdom. Visiting strangers, taking care of the poor, helping the sick, visiting prisoners. That's the list that gets to go on his right. He will say to those on the left, "Go away from me, you cursed ones, into everlasting fire, which has been prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, you did not visit me." Matthew 24, 29 to 31. But immediately after the trouble of those days, what is it? After the trouble. After the trouble of those days. The sun will darken, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from heaven, the powers of the heavens will be shaken, and then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. And then all the tribes of the land will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. He will send out his angels with the great shofar. They will gather together his chosen from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So this word, gathering of the chosen. Gather, that's the key word. Exodus 23:16, it says, "You are to observe the feast of ingathering at the end of the year." That's the Feast of Tabernacles. The Feast of Ingathering. It's the final feast on the biblical calendar. And he uses the word gather. Gather your crops. Just as he will have a final gathering, he will gather and separate the wheat from the tares, will he not? Deuteronomy 16:13, "You are to keep the feast of Sukkot for 7 days after gathering in your produce from the threshing floor and the winepress." Gather. Matthew 24:37 to 41, it says, "Just as the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man." What was going on in the days of Noah? Rampant homosexuality. Rampant. There were all sorts of crimes being committed against God at that time. Just as the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. We can trust that. That's what our society is going to be like. "For in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day Noah entered the ark. They did not understand until the flood came and swept them all away. So shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field. One will be taken, one will be left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken, one will be left." Who's taken and who's left in the story of Noah? Did Noah get taken from the earth, or was he left in protection? As it was in the days of Noah. The righteous ones got to go into the ark. So some were taken and some were left. What's the picture? The righteous are protected. What's our picture in the story of Passover? The righteous are protected in Goshen, the land of Goshen, as all the plagues are falling on everyone. So we need to understand the analogy when he says it's like the days of Noah. And then Yeshua gives the parable about the wheat and the tares. And he says, let them grow up together, the wheat and the tares. Doesn't matter if the tares are going to try to destroy the wheat. Let them grow together. And at the harvest time, when's that? The end of the age. I will tell the reapers, gather up the weeds, tie them in bundles to burn them up. Gather the wheat into my barn. So the wheat goes into the barn. It goes into a covering. It's safe. The weeds, not so safe. They're going to be burned up. You see how he separates, just like he did in the time of Noah. Matthew 13, the disciples came to him and said, explain the parable of the weeds of the field. And he tells them, the harvest is the end of the age. Got it underlined. The harvest is the end of the age. The reapers are angels, so the angels are going to come to gather up. Therefore, just as the weeds are gathered up and burned with fire, so shall it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send forth his angels. They will gather out of his kingdom all stumbling blocks and those who practice lawlessness against Torah. Lawlessness. They will throw him into the fiery furnace, and in that place will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Daniel 8. Now the vision of the evenings and mornings about the sacrifices that has been told to you, it's true. Seal up the vision. It concerns many days from now. Not the time of the end, many days from now. Daniel 9:24. 70 weeks are decreed concerning your people and your holy city, to put an end to transgression, bring sin to an end, to atone for iniquity, and bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and the prophecy, and to anoint the Holy of Holies. There it is again. Seal it up. Seal it up. Daniel 12:4. But you, Daniel, close up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many will run back and forth, and knowledge will increase. Daniel 12:9, and then he said, go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Seal. What do we do when we seal something up? Have you ever put something in plastic wrap? It's sealed up. You can still see it. It's still there. It still exists, but it's wrapped up, not to be coming out for a while. Sealed up. And then he tells them, sealed up till the time of the end. Revelation 22, he says, these words are trustworthy and true. Then he says, do not seal up. That's crazy. Do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book. Which book? Revelation. Do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is near. Behold, I'm coming soon, and my reward is with me to pay back each one according to his deeds. Please notice that verse. Rewards are according to our deeds. Salvation is not. Salvation is a gift. Rewards are according to our deeds. Rewards are earned. Matthew 24:32-36. Now learn the parable from the fig tree. When its branches become tender and put forth leaves, you will know that summer is near. Also, when you see all these things, know that it's near, at the door. Amen, I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things happen. What generation? The generation that begins to see these things. this will take place within a generation. Generation in Scripture is anywhere from 40 to 70 years. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. And of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven nor the Son, except the Father alone. So why does he use the parable of the fig tree? Why figs? Let's think about the Garden of Eden. What did man cover himself with when he sinned? Figs. Fig leaves. Fig leaves. It was his way of hiding from God. God does not want us to hide from him. So he curses the fig tree. Jeremiah 24 contains a parable about figs, and they, in the story, represent the Jewish people in the land of Israel. And he says, notice the fig tree. Wow, notice Israel. Watch the Jewish people. Watch the land of Israel. When you see all these things, it says, when the branches of the fig tree, Israel, when its branches become tender and put forth leaves, you know summer is near. Israel wasn't even a nation until 1948. Now, Trump has declared that the embassy would be in Jerusalem. This is big news, getting back the land, getting back all the things that were stolen from them. Watch Israel. This is part of the unfolding of the time of the end. Mark 13:23, Yeshua is talking. He said, I have told you everything beforehand. Isaiah 46:9, I'm God, there's none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, from ancient times what is yet to come. Ecclesiastes 3:15, whatever exists has already been, whatever will be has already been. But God recalls what has passed. Now, in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom. It says, in the days of those kings, not after those kings. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom, the one that Yeshua brought in by his crucifixion and resurrection. He started the eternal kingdom. Remember the statue of Nebuchadnezzar? The stone that hit the statue is the stone the builders rejected. He becomes the chief cornerstone. That is also the stone, the shepherd of Israel. It says it in Isaiah. The stone, the shepherd of Israel. That is the beginning of the eternal kingdom that will never be destroyed. Daniel goes on and says the dream is certain and the interpretation is trustworthy. So our recap of Babylon was the golden head of Nebuchadnezzar's statue dream. It was the lion in Daniel's vision of four beasts. Nebuchadnezzar built a golden idol, and he expected the kingdom to worship the idol. Daniel and his friends refused and were thrown into the fiery furnace. God preserved their lives. Nebuchadnezzar went insane, but his sanity returned when he acknowledged the God of Daniel. The large tree of his dream was chopped down, leaving a stump in the ground, but the roots were still there. Grandson Belshazzar used the holy temple vessels to serve wine for 1,000 guests. His arrogance and his disrespect against God caused him to be slain, and Babylon fell to the Medo-Persians. Daniel interpreted dreams and visions for all of these kings, and he saw many of these things come to pass in his lifetime. And while serving the kings of Babylon, Daniel saw a vision of himself in the capital of Persia, thus preparing him for his future move. He experienced the fall of Babylon shortly thereafter. Medo-Persian, the next kingdom, was the silver-breasted arms in Nebuchadnezzar's statue dream, and the bear in Daniel's vision of four beasts. Darius the Mede insisted that his kingdom pray to him. Daniel refused. He was thrown in the lion's den, and God preserved him. And then Darius acknowledged the God of Daniel. Cyrus of Persia believed the prophecies in Isaiah that were written about him, that he was anointed by God to support the exiles and help them to return to Israel and rebuild their temple. Artaxerxes, also of the kingdom of Persia, supported the restoration project. Artaxerxes too appointed Ezra to lead the people in learning and following Torah. Daniel saw a vision of the ram and goat in the battle, representing the future downfall of the Medo-Persians to the Greeks. He prophesied the Greek Empire spreading rapidly and breaking into 4 kingdoms, with the rise of a wicked king, Antiochus IV. Gabriel appeared to Daniel to explain the visions and give him an exact timeline for when the 70-year exile would end, when Jerusalem would be rebuilt, and when the coming Messiah would die, and when Jerusalem would be completely destroyed again. Gabriel gave Daniel the message of the future Messiah at the time of the evening offering, the exact time that Messiah would die. He then appeared to Zechariah, announced the birth of John the Baptist, who would prepare the way of the Messiah, and Gabriel appeared again to Miriam to announce her selection as the mother of the coming Messiah. That was Gabriel's mission. The Messiah is going to be coming. Tells Zechariah, tells Miriam, and then he's done with his mission. Greek Empire, that was number 3 empire. The Greek Empire was the bronze torso and legs in Nebuchadnezzar's statue dream, and the leopard in Daniel's vision of the 4 beasts. Daniel foresaw the rapid spread of this kingdom. It split into 4 kingdoms, and then the 6 Syrian wars followed. The final war was led by the vicious Seleucid king who attacked Israel and the Holy Temple. Corrupt Jews broke the covenant, made an alliance with the king, resulted in the loss of freedom for all Jews to observe their faith and worship in their temple. The Hellenized Jews abandoned their faith and their practices. The Greek became the worldwide language. Ptolemy IV supported the project. Did you catch that? The king of Egypt supported the project of translating the Hebrew Bible into Greek so the Jews would have access to it. That came from the Greeks. That's how we have our Greek New Testament. The Roman Empire is that the 4th beast, the terrifying one. They were mixed with the Syrians. They represented Nebuchadnezzar's iron legs in his statue and the feet of clay mixed with iron. They were the 4th beast in Daniel's vision, the extremely destructive and terrifying kingdom that was divided. The kingdom incorporated the traits from all the previous kingdoms. This kingdom would be crushed and taken down by the final kingdom, the eternal one. Like Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who tried to change Jewish laws, this kingdom did change God's commandments. They eliminated the 2nd commandment of the 10 commandments, which is about graven images. They also eliminated the commandment saying that you have to honor the Sabbath day. They made it into a legal work day. They legislated Sunday as an official day of rest and worship of the sun god, thus the name Sunday. Good old Roman Empire. Final kingdom. This is the one we get to stay in. The eternal kingdom was the stone in Nebuchadnezzar's statue dream. Daniel said that the stone was not made by hands. It grew into a large mountain and it filled the earth, crushing the statue and bringing it down. The stone is seen in the 10 Commandments, carved in stone, the Word of God. Is that the stone that crushes the worldly kingdoms, the Word of God? The stone is also seen when David killed Goliath. His name in Hebrew is Gol, and he was from Goth. This is where we got Golgotha. Golgotha was the site of the crucifixion. Yeshua took down the giant at the crucifixion. Yeshua was the stone the builders rejected. He became the chief cornerstone, the one who crushed the enemy at Golgotha. Daniel saw a vision of Yeshua and the Ancient of Days seated on a throne, opening the books of people's lives. Daniel was 100% accurate with the prophecies that have already unfolded. We can expect he will be 100% accurate with the prophecies still yet to unfold in our lifetime. So have we made ourselves ready for the great white throne judgment when the books are opened? Matthew 20, therefore, whoever acknowledges me before men, I will also acknowledge him before my Father who is in heaven. Whoever denies me before men, I will also deny him before my Father who is in heaven. Serious charge. Luke 12, 8-9. Now I tell you, whoever acknowledges me before men, the Son of Man will also acknowledge him before the angels of God. Who denies me before men will be denied before the angels of God. John 20. Who is the liar, if not the one who denies that Yeshua is the Messiah? This one is the anti-Messiah or anti-Christ. It's not a single individual. It's anyone who denies that Yeshua is the Messiah. The one who denies the Father and the Son. No one who denies the Son has the Father. The one who acknowledges the Son also has the Father. So I guess the question we have to ask ourselves is, what book is my name written in? Am I written in the book of life? Because that's the one I want to be in. If I'm written in the other books, I'm judged for my actions and my deeds. If I'm in the book of life, I'm in the palm of his hand. I get to stand in the presence of God forever. And I get to be with all the people of God that I've grown to love here on earth. I'd rather be in the book of life. Thank you, Lord. We come before you with humility. We're in awe of you and how you have written the book, and all the clues are already in the book of how it's going to end. We thank you that we have that ability to have our name written in the book of life. It's simple. We just say, Lord, take over my life. Take over my life. I'm giving my life to you. And write my name in the book of life because I want to be in your presence forever. We thank you and we praise you in Yeshua's name. B'Shem Yeshua, HaMashiach Sar Shalom. Amen.